Why, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Animals in the Bible Study Podcast. This time we're going to do a short one, but I think it's an important lesson for all of us. No matter where you stand politically, we live in an age where we have become very reliant on people, on leaders. And I think I made this point similar point when I did the point on uh, the story in Kings about about prophets, and the necessity of making sure we don't that rely too much on prophets, and the idea that God will use us. Well, God will use us for anything, and the same kind of goes for this circumstance. But I'm going to take it a bit further. So this time we are going to read 1 Kings chapter 12, and we are going to read from, this is the New American Standard Version, and we're going to read 1 through 12, but I'm going to start and then work backwards with, go back, starting verse 14. And he spoke to them according to the advice of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions. So, what this is in context is the story of Rehoboam. Now, Rehoboam was the king after Solomon. In fact, his son, who reigned in Israel. So, the kingdom has just been divided, and we have Rehoboam acting as the new king of at least Israel. There's Jeroboam and Rehoboam, basically. And so the context of this is, since Solomon has died, he wants, of course, advisors to lead him in his new role as king. And Solomon was known, of course, as being one of the wisest kings in the Bible. And so now he's left all alone, so he has now decided to seek advice. And we're going to see how badly this goes. So, starting in verse 1 of chapter 12, then Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel come to Shechem to make him king. Now, where Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, heard it, he was living in Egypt. And they sent and called for him, and all the assembly room spoke to Rehoboam, saying, Your father made our yoke hard. Therefore, lighten the service of your father and the yoke he put on us, and we will serve you. And he said, Depart for 3 days, then return to me. So the people departed. And Rehoboam counseled the elders who served his father Solomon while he was still alive, saying, How do you counsel me to serve this people? They said to him, If you will be a servant to these people and serve them and grant them petition, speak good words to them, and they will be your servants forever. Grant them this petition, and speak good words to them, and they will be your servants forever. But he forsook the counsel of the elders they had given him, and consulted with the young men who grew up with him, who had served him. But so he said to them, What counsel do you give, that we may answer the people who have spoken to you, saying, Lighten the yoke which your father put on us? The young man grew up with him, saying, Thus you shall make this people who spoke to you, saying, Your father made our yoke heavy, how will you lighten us? But you shall speak to them, My little finger is thicker than my father's loins. Whereas my father loaded you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline with you and scorpions. And so we get down, Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam on the third day, as the king had directed them, saying, Return to me on the third day. king spoke to the people harshly, for he forsook the elders had given him, and spoke according to the advice of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, and I will discipline you with scorpions. So the king did not listen to the people, for it was a turn of events from the Lord, that the Lord established his word, which the Lord spoke through Achiah the Sheolite to Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. So, what is the point of all this? Well, there's 2 points. A couple points we could go down. But of course, we're going to highlight where highly animals in the Bible and how they are used. So, in this one, we're used as a metaphor. He recalls the yoke which Solomon had put on the people, describing it as a whip. And then he describes his burden and what he's going to do to the people as a scorpion. And of course, scorpions bite, sting, they have venom, and are so he's using the analogy to make sure just how people understand how much worse their burden is going to be. My father used whips, I'm going to use scorpions. Now, I've heard of people using whips to get people to do stuff. Scorpions, not so much. Uh, Scorpions seem, um, right. There's could be a couple reasons for using this. One is, of course, the poison, and bites of a scorpion are far worse than that. And the other uh, metaphor we could possibly gain from this is a whip has usually a very direct intention and effect, right? It's precise in how you aim it, where you aim it, right? It is guided, right? Scorpions are unpredictable animals, right? Like if I just threw you in a bunch of scorpions, who knows when and where they're going to bite, sting, and insert venom into you and cause all sorts of different pains and all sorts of stuff. And whips um, are not necessarily going to hurt you. It could be used simply as a method of control. Again, a scorpion, unpredictable, a whip, not so much. So, what is the point we should take away? Well, first of all, I think one thing we can take away from this is that often, as throughout history, things tend to go in a spiral direction once they start spiraling. Very rarely do things improve or lighten. Now, this is not always true, but this has been an important part of history. History as always seems to be on a downward trajectory most of the time. A nation falls quite readily and quite easily. It began with King David, who made many mistakes but repented and often was uh, found ways to recompense for what he had done. Solomon, not so much. He made a lot of errors and despite his wisdom and wealth, was very burdensome on the people. And this may come as a surprise to a lot of people who know Solomon so much for his wisdom, but especially in his later years, Solomon appears to have taken a very downward turn and have, because of the influence of foreign women in his life, because of his desire for status, possibly maybe doubting too much in not God's wisdom, but his own wisdom, seems to have added great burden, unnecessary burden to the people of Israel. And now we see Rehoboam basically say, I don't even care at all, and I'm even going to be very intentional in my desire to hurt you. And you won't know what it's coming. It'll be unpredictable. It'll be a burden for which there may not even directed purpose, only to cause pain and harm. And so we see a downward trajectory of history playing itself out here. The other important thing I think we can takeaway from this is that, um, and goes to the downward trajectory on a related point, is that um, we think that we can often appeal to the better side of people, that that somehow the people who are very foolish will end up listening to us, and very rarely do foolish men often listen. In fact, they often double down. They often decide to make even more of a terrible situation. Rarely do foolish or very good people listen. And so it's often fruitless to appeal to foolish men. We think they could be reasoned with. We think that they have points to be made. And this especially goes to people in power and position. Well, power and position gives you an authority not only to ignore people, but then to actually implement it. Very few people have the ability to actually do much, even if they're foolish, right? And affect your life. But if they have some power in some sense, whether they are um, just in a position due to some sort of um, familial thing, or you work with them in a capacity which is nearly impossible to, unless you just disassociate entirely, such as work or church or the government, which is very hard to do, especially the last one, especially because we live in a governed society. Everybody does. Uh, People are very willing to exert their power in ways that are not healthy or good. And this goes to the major point, which I think is important, is that we are all looking for someone to lighten our burden. We think politicians will do it for us somehow. Even even if they're good politicians, very few are very effective at doing it. Mainly because of the systems we live in, but also just because they can't concern themselves in everyday matters as readily as they can if you have someone close to you. We think that they know you, and they don't. They don't really know you. They don't really know your circumstances, and so they may not even know what you need, even if they are good. And most of them are pretty selfish and don't seek the good really of anyone but themselves. Very few. There's a minority who do. How much that minority exists is sometimes up for debate and stuff, and sometimes it has crept into the majority, I think, but rarely it does. And so this is the other thing. If we're looking to anyone to lighten our burdens, it should be Christ. Christ himself said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Right? That's what he said. That is the only person who can lighten our burden, who does not seek to add to it, or merely just ease it in a slight manner, who seeks to take away all of our burden and to lay it on himself. All our troubles, all our sorrows, we can bring to him, and he is able to carry them because he willingly did so to carry uh, the the stain of sin in the world, and sought to reconcile us to God again. He sought to reconcile us through his life, death, and resurrection, because he truly sought a real connection with people. He heard people's cries and he answered. If they cried to him, he answered them. And he heard the cries of his people and he answered by coming in the form of a man. He didn't just sympathize with us, he didn't just wave a magic wand uh, and take it uh, magically away, but he didn't just sit in his and so he didn't sit on the throne magically, because that's not the way the world works, because we often create our own troubles and our own ills, and we would just go right back to it most likely. So the only way you could really rid ourselves is by providing us with the ultimate uh, way of redemption, which was by providing for himself a living sacrifice unto God, perfect, holy, blameless, in the way he demonstrated his love for us in such a way that he was able to redeem us. And if we accept that, we are accepting into his own sacrifice. So it doesn't necessarily make all of our burdens go away. In fact, sometimes we end up taking on more burdens because we're taking on other people's. We're willingly taking on other people's burdens, their troubles, their sorrows, because that's what Christ did. And he's calling us to the same thing. But it's light because it's easy. It's easy because we can know that there is joy and richness and help being offered. And and there will be a time when all those burdens will go away eventually, but it requires us to sacrifice, to give, to make other people's burdens light. So in the end, we can see the fullness of God, the glory of God, the joy of knowing Him, because we have willingly done the same thing He did. We will be seated in glory just as Christ is seated in glory because of the sacrifice He gave. And so Christ came to do it, thus we should do as well. So the only example and the only one who can truly free us from our burdens is Christ. And so remember that. People will add whips, they'll add scorpions, they'll add snakes, right? Um, they will become, there will be wolves among sheep ready to destroy just anyone for their own pleasure. Uh, and yet, we have one who is actually the good shepherd and the lamb who lays his life down so that we may be free of all the ills of this world. And it won't be and it, but it won't be easy in the sense of it just magically goes away. But it becomes easy because we know Christ did it. If Christ did it for us, and he has given us his power and his spirit, if we accept and believe in him, then all those things become easy. And we don't have to suffer in this life. We'll suffer, but we will suffer joyfully and with gladness in our hearts. There you are. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.